All right, let's take a look at the business scene with one of Quebec's most famous business people. Vince Guzzo is the CEO of Cinema Guzzo, and he joins us once again on the program. Hi, Mr. Guzzo. Hi, Vince. Thanks for coming back on.
How are you, Elias?
I'm doing great. Listen, I always love talking to you. I have to say, I was surprised to see you back on the show today, just because the last couple of times we're on, we had to talk about conspiracy theories and your social media and that kind of stuff. And I was worried that you never want to come back on the show. And I'm really happy that you're back on the show. So thanks for coming.
I'm not that sensitive, believe it or not. I'm actually thick-skinned.
Okay.
So I'm used to it.
Okay, so I love that. I also now, every time you come on, I have to go and dissect your social media before you come on. And what's interesting here, I'm so glad, I'm so happy to report, let me tell you, and let's tell our listeners here, there is virtually zero anything close to adjacent conspiracy theory content on your social media. So I love that. But here is something that's very interesting. This was in June, at the end of June. You posted a few links that are very interesting. So here's one thing. You posted a quote from Mr. Sunshine.
Yep.
There are some people whom you have to let go of, not because there's hate and bad energy, but because they need to grow and you do as well. As long as this is done with grace and respect, a future return is always possible. Let go, but wish them well. And then another post right around that time. You can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. Reread and let that sink in. What's going on, Mr. Sunshine Vince Guzzo? Why post that? What's happening in your life where you had to post these words of wisdom?
No, I think it's important that every once in a while, people always feel that change is very hard or it's undesired or change under certain conditions. Truth of the matter is people grow, right? I mean, our friends that we had in high school may be different friends that we have today. Co-workers, the people we want to socialize with and everything. I think after 14 months of introspective and of being able to think about our lives, I think we're all allowed to say, hey, it's okay to move on. It's okay to change the way we see things. I mean, 14 months have gone by, right? So you got to remember, a lot of the comments or a lot of the quotes I sometimes put are not necessarily a message about my personal life. They are sometimes stuff that has happened or that I've seen in my personal life. So, for example, it may very well be that, I gave that advice to somebody, and then because they, came to me with a problem, and so I thought maybe other people should also see that, right? I mean, we have to remember, especially when it comes to the people that we like to hang around with. We have to remember, I mean, I think it's an old Jewish saying that says, show me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are, right? So the people we hang around with, the normality of the people that we are with, it becomes our normality. And so I think it's just important to say that after 14 months of being cooped up and being obligated to tolerate certain realities, now is the time, with the newfound freedom from COVID, maybe we should also do a little spring cleaning.
We're with Vince Guzzo from Cinema Guzzo, and I'll be very honest, Vince. I was trying to do a little bit of Oprah-style psychoanalysis of your tweets to try and find out the inner meaning. But it's something you said. You said something there really interesting. It's about the company you keep, right? And one thing of note in the last little while, you've done, I would say, a couple of maybe I guess you would call them campaign events with some conservative candidates. Frank Cavallaro among them from the Mount Royal candidate. So I'm very happy to see that you're not attaching yourself to the PPC and you're going with the conservatives here. So should we say, are you going to be supporting the conservatives in this next federal election? Is it safe to say that?
It's safe to say that, and it's safe to say I did the last election, I will in this election, and it's safe to say that, I've expressed my opinion internally to the party, and I've made sure that they understand that we have to but clarify our message a little better. I had somebody tell me that, conservatives are about no government spending. And I said, no, conservatives are about no government waste. As for spending, if it needs to get spent, we need to do it. We will do it. The problem is we want to try and avoid wasting money and so forth, so forth. So, I think, if I'm going to use a quote from Churchill, I think Churchill had said, if in your 20s you're not a liberal, that means you're heartless. But if in your 40s you're not a conservative, that means you're brainless, something like that. Or
yeah. No, I think you got it pretty good. That was I recall that that phrase as well. Hey, let's talk while you're on with us. Let's talk about Green Zone. Let's talk about reopening, and give us the box office update. What was hot this weekend at the box office at Cinema Guzzo?
So the hottest movie this weekend was probably, Baby Boss. It's the newest one of the two. There was Forever Purge, which was a horror movie, so that wouldn't. But Fast 9 continued strong again, week 2. So, I think the box office right now is at about, 42% of what it was last year, same weekend, which is very, very good compared to what we were at last year. At the same time, I think we were at more like 10%. So, I think there's a return to movie theaters slowly but gradually. And, the fact does remain, Elias, that people go to the movies to watch a movie. So unless the movies that they want to see, start coming out, like, for example, Black Widow is going to come out on Thursday, for sure, people will start coming more and more to the theaters. And I'm suspecting that by construction holidays, which is about 2 weeks, we'll be back to what I would call 75-80% of normality.
Black Widow, that's going to be a huge blockbuster. I'm sure everyone's hoping that in the cinema space. We're with Vince Guzzo, CEO of Cinema Guzzo. Vince, I want to ask you one question here. So we've reopened. We're in the green zone now, so things are moving ahead. And one thing I find interesting is that over the course of the pandemic, there was a tremendous amount of government support to keep businesses afloat. But as that government support goes away, there are going to be a lot of businesses faced with the prospect here of keeping things going. And it may be even more difficult, even with things reopening, it may be even more difficult to keep a business afloat at this time. What's your message to a small business owner that is now going to have to, get back to reality of keeping their business afloat without any government programs?
Well, ultimately the message that I have is more for the government, to remind the government that, look, anybody who survived because of subsidies should be able to go back to normality without, with little pain. Mm-hmm. I think the real thing that people need to realize is that a lot of people were not given subsidies; they were given loans. So there was an easiness or a facility in getting loans, like a HASCAP or an EDC loan. Even though you weren't exporting stuff or whatever. So the problem with debt is that you've now got a higher burden to pay back, interest, capital, and so forth. And so I have a feeling that, that's where we're going to have a problem. I don't think it's the subsidies are going to be the issue. I think the real issues are going to be those loans that you had to take to survive because your business. For example, until October of 2020, movie theaters were not eligible to the rent subsidy. We then became so in October. So for the first, call it 6 months, we didn't have any of that subsidy. So, if we accumulated debt or if people accumulated debt, we're going to have to pay that debt back. And I think that's where the big concern is. If interest rates start going up, will those smaller businesses who have, tagged on $500,000, $1 million of debt without anything to show for, because the balance sheet says an additional $1 million debt, but no asset to go with it, will those people pass through? Those are the people I'm the most worried at. I know that when it comes to the restaurant that I opened, I have 3 of them, one under construction, one of them that's still closed, and one of them that opened. The one that opened is doing slightly, almost 90% of its original business. The second one isn't open because we don't have the labor force to be able to open it right now.
Where is that restaurant, Vince? Where is that restaurant that can't open because of labor?
In Marché Central.
Okay.
The Julieta restaurant, Marché Central, hasn't been able to open because of a shortage of staff. The one in La Cordaire in St. Leonard has been able to open. And so, I think those are the realities right now that everybody's going to face. Mm-hmm. But per se, I think most businesses, will go back. Somebody once told me, not too long ago, said to me, I'm a little concerned about the grocery stores. And I says, what are you talking about? Just when they go back to normal. Because eventually, you got to remember, they're going to have to go back to what they were selling normally without, everybody eating at home.
Yeah.
Right. And so so there's going to be a lot of fluctuation. like I said, the advice I give to bankers and I give to the government is you're going to have to give some latitude on those loans. In the case of the government, maybe some of those loans will become forgivable loans.
Forgivable, yeah.
In the case of the banks, well, if they were five-year term loans, make them 10 if you want to get paid back, because you may not be able to get paid back in 5.
Vince, we got to leave it there. I'll let you know, last week I was in Saguenay, and the number of restaurants that were closed both Monday and Tuesday because they simply don't have people to work was staggering. So, I understand it's difficult finding employees right now. Vince Guzzo, CEO of Cinema Guzzo, thanks so much.
Thank you.